Welcome everyone. This is episode 5 of the Geospatial Index. We are very proud to announce that we have Melinda from Proxi, the CEO, no less, and our third CEO in a row on this podcast. We're also proud to say that Melinda is our first female CEO. Another addition is that Emily, a colleague of mine, has come on as a co-host for this episode. We'll see how we go for future ones. So without further ado, Melinda, please could you tell us the origin story of Proxi?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So for those who don't know, Proxi is a no-code mapping tool made for everyday people. We like to call ourselves the Canva of maps. We're often not going after, traditional geospatial professionals who have experience in, using ArcGIS or QGIS, those kinds of tools. We're often going after people who, I'll talk about this later, but are community leaders and are making maps in a casual cartographer capacity. And so Proxi started with that focus in mind. My background is that I did some geospatial work when I worked in the U.S. intelligence community, and then I got my went and studied human-computer interaction for my PhD. And Proxis came out of this moment of serendipity during COVID. Here in the U.S., I assume elsewhere too, there's these kids go trick-or-treating, and Seattle was really conservative about mask wearing and safety and things like that. And I was a first-time mom, and I wanted to make sure my kid had a great trick-or-treat experience and the other kids in the neighborhood had that experience while also staying safe. So I went to my neighborhood parent group, and I saw that people were sharing their addresses on the group saying, hey, I'm going to have, candy outside at a distance, wearing masks, etc. And there was just this long list of addresses. And given my background, I thought this is really so goofy. Like nobody's going to be able to actually use this to walk around and, have that modified Halloween experience. So what I did was I went and set up what many people do is I went and set up a Google My Map, and I created a form that went to a Google site that hosted a form that went to a sheet that went to a Google My Map. And for those who have done that before, it's a total pain and there's no automation. And but I created this map. I put it out into the Facebook group, and it just took off. I thought it would be just for my neighborhood, but it expanded to all of Seattle. There were like 2,500 homes added by the end. I was on the local news on Good Morning America. Everyone was using it the night of Halloween. And that's when something clicked for me. Like, first of all, why was this experience with Google My Maps so terrible and challenging, even as someone that has like coding background and geospatial background? And two, like, why haven't we made it more accessible for communities to map and share information? And so that experience, after, one, seeing how hard it was to build, and two, seeing how impactful it could be to the community, is what led me to call Chelsea, who's my co-founder, and say, hey, I think there's something here. What if we built the Canva of maps? And so that's kind of how it started. And we built a product, and we're looking for a market. You're supposed to do it the other way around, but we just thought, okay, we'll build this cool product. And we've now have all kinds of media companies and Chamber of Commerce's and, destination marketing organizations and, community leaders using it. And so that's kind of how it started. And it's obviously evolved a lot since then.
It's great to hear. And I'm currently in a mentorship group where we were discussing, since ChatGPT came out, how you either have to have a very strong background in coding or use very expensive software if you want to make maps. And we were asking the question, now with AI, is it possible to find the middle road and for everyday people to make maps? So it's really exciting to see what you've done with it. And I feel like you've already touched on this already, but we were going to ask, what niche have you cornered?
Yeah, I think, just adding on what I've already mentioned, we've really focused on and found a niche in hyper-local experts. So, that goes beyond, maybe someone who writes a guide for a city or travel guides or things like that. We're often used by people who are living in an area and creating information or content about that area. So, like I said, news or local news organizations, newsletters, um, uh, destination marketing organizations love Proxi. And then we also have a lot of just consumers using it for various use cases, like anything from, more trick or treat maps. We obviously have tons of those now, to holiday lights maps, art walks, wine walks, neighborhood engagement events. And so it's really fun to see all of the different ways that people are using it, but it really comes down to people who know a local area and are creating a guide for people for that local area.
It kind of reminds me, is it the Nextdoor app or neighborhood app?
Next door, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of sound like the vibe of it seems to be similar to that.
Yeah, and we're actually pretty good buddies with the CTO at Nextdoor, and there's a lot of analogies to what they're doing with their trick or treat map and help map, and what we're doing as far as enabling communities. So we're both seeing something similar, and I think it bodes well for the future of consumers to have tools like this at their fingertips.
Even just for the local community in general, to be able to have these things that can connect them to other people or experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really is about experience. We've seen when visitors or locals are using Proxi maps, it actually can change the foot traffic in a city or in a neighborhood, because typically you might just go to the downtown area and browse along the shop, browse the shops and pop in one at a time, which again is a great experience. But you might not have even known that 1 block away is, one of the most famous ice cream shops in the neighborhood, or, it's the best place to get a foot massage or something like that. There's kind of this missing piece to helping us connect all of this information in people's minds and online to the real world. And so we think about ourselves as really building some of that connective tissue between all the digital information about place and actual physical place.
Kind of like a way to showcase your neighborhood, or the unique things. Yeah, okay. It sounds like it's really popular. Are you tracking customer growth month to month? How's it on that metric?
It's been, I feel like all CEOs are like, it's great, it's been awesome. But it really has been. We've been growing over 100% month over month for like the past 6 months. So, and a lot of our growth is organic, and it's people who are seeing Proxi maps out in the wild and then coming to make their own for their own neighborhood or business or, wedding. There's a lot of wedding maps on Proxi where you share.
A wedding map?
Yeah. So if you're,
God, I missed that. I could have done that.
Right. So, if you have people flying into town, well, whether they're flying into town or not, you can put where the ceremony is, the rehearsal dinner, all of your recommendations in the area all on one map. And so we have a fun little niche in that space as well. Although we don't really go after weddings, it's kind of been growing organically there, where we've seen people, make little guides to their neighborhood or whatever city they're in. And I was just talking to someone last week who went to a wedding, and there was a Proxi map on the welcome booklet. It was like a QR code to the map. And they went and started visiting all the different places that the couple had suggested. And they were actually running into other folks at the wedding at the same brewery, because they were all kind of on their map, doing a little walking tour of the city. So yeah, it goes back to just experience with place. And it's a cool way to have that shared experience.
And what would you say would be the strangest use of the Proxi creator portal so far?
So again, we have all kinds of random use cases like weddings. But some of my favorites recently are, there was a maple syrup tapping map. So there was a crowdsourced map of kind of the northeastern United States, and it was one where all of these people who were tapping maple syrup added their farms and photo, or their, I don't know if farm's the right word, but basically their setups and their photos of their boilers and how they extracted the maple syrup from the trees, and it had like 300 or 400 points on it. Like all of these people were just like experiencing community in the maple tapping industry together through this map. And they had, Proxi has a lot of customization features. And so they had different categories for like, okay, you're tapping right now, or you're boiling right now, or you're selling. And so because when you add a point to a Proxi map, that point adder can go back and edit it later. People were updating it, with their status on, where they were in the process. And so that was really unique and cool, very entirely organic. We only found out about it because we had a couple of requests come into our help desk of people like, hey, how do I do this? We're like, what map are you talking about? So that's a fun one. We also have one of the biggest maps of the West Coast witch themed businesses. So if you're looking for restaurants or bars that are all witch themed, or stores, Proxi's got that. A Reddit group ended up making that and adding to it and keeping it updated. So those are some of my favorites, recently, but I feel like we're surprised every day. And maybe in your neck of the woods, there's one called London Dark History. And
Awesome.
so you can
I have to look that up now.
Yeah, so you can go through a map. There's like over 100 points on it. It's where people were murdered, like historical things that happened in different parts, like even down to on Proxi, you can add places, but you can also just double click on any lat long. And so it's down to like the part of the street where various things happen. So I can send it to you too if you want it, but
that'd be great.
Dark History or Proxi.
We have to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, even just going on Maps GPT and looking at some of the suggestions, there are like the most haunted buildings or things like that. And it's like, I've never really thought about mapping that, but it's cool to be able to have that now.
Yeah, I think that's what really sets us apart is there's all kinds of websites online who will give lots of people use Proxi for restaurants and things like that, but give restaurant suggestions, activity suggestions, hotels, things like that. And that is a huge use case for us. But it's kind of that one level deeper niche that's kind of fun. We think about ourselves as like a geospatial Wikipedia or like a Reddit of the world kind of thing, where you can actually find and convert on niche things that are more personal to you. It's just like, how we all use I don't know if you guys, but I use TikTok now. And it's like one of the reasons it's so powerful is because it has that, next level of personalization around these niches that you might have not even known you were interested in. And now you're getting served content about them. And so Proxi, in a similar way, with the data that we have and the creators that we have, we feel like we can get to that next level of personalization with the world, which will be so cool as we grow.
Wow. So it's like Proxi has moved into the more traditional, the ways that social media companies try to drive engagement, where you've got creators almost on Proxi. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you've talked about. I love the phrase that you're enabling communities, or that communities can express themselves. And another thing that's a theme in what you're saying is that it's fun.
Yeah.
You never hear this with maps.
One thing I was thinking is like, since the internet, everything has become so globalized and everything is on the internet somewhere, but not really in a physical place. Whereas I feel like Proxi is focusing more on the local community and really getting people to engage with that.
Yep. It's getting people to engage and take, I think we're trying to combine knowledge from two different places into Proxi. One is people's brains. So, you have the one friend who you ask where to do X, Y, or Z. And we want that information to start being housed and shared in maps, because that's, for example, if you go to Washington, D.C. or something like that, you text your friend who lives there. I used to live there because I'm always this friend. And typically you say, hey, what should I do when I'm there? And I would send just these massively long text messages of the best, not only what museum to go to, but what section of the museum to go to, or the best place to get this type of food, not even just the cuisine, but maybe like where to get a samosa or something like that. And what the first type of information that we're trying to help people organize is that information, the stuff that's in their head, the stuff that they're knowledgeable about. That's kind of after the local experts. And then the other kind of information is kind of like community knowledge. So like those Reddit threads, or like, where the trick-or-treating is, that kind of information is also enabled with Proxi, because we have like the really robust crowdsourcing features. That's where we started. But then we, have kind of expanded into the local, hyper-local expertise space too.
I thought these questions about Proxi would just be a minor introduction, and then we'd get onto the real topic. But actually, Proxi sounds really awesome. But we did, like, the only reason I sort of became aware of Proxi at all was that Maps GPT cropped up on Twitter. And what the Geospatial Index is basically, it started with trying to find all of the world's geospatial companies that are on stock exchanges. I've found 167 so far, and they're on 23 stock exchanges. But also, you have to keep up with, what's current. And, well, it's large language models. And I think I'm up to about 6 different projects that I've found on Twitter, or one additional one through a networking group in London. But yeah, one of them is Maps GPT. So, I mean, what is it?
Yeah. So Maps GPT is we call it a natural language map builder. So you can go onto Maps GPT. We kind of launched it as a separate product for marketing reasons, like to find people like you, to get people to start exploring and using Proxi in a way that's really exciting with what's going on in the world today. So you can go to mapsgpt.com, and you have 6 different prompt options. You can plan a trip on it. You can, ask for the sexiest bridges in the United States. You can ask for all of these really goofy things, or practical things like, where can I impress my in-laws? Those kinds of questions to it. And we use OpenAI's API to get results. We then put it on a Proxi map, so you can explore it, save it, share it, and actually go into our Proxi editor and edit it as needed. So that's what Maps GPT is in a nutshell. It's a AI layer on top of our already powerful kind of Proxi framework.
And just to comment on, because I've used it a bit, I was just seeing what it was capable of and looking at the user interface. And so I was asking it about the risks of climate change within certain areas. And the way that it would give me information was very sort of casual and offhanded. It was kind of like, pack your snorkel, the sea levels are going to rise. So it was definitely, I can tell it's not made for that kind of analysis, or not necessarily serious topics.
Yeah, and we launched it with that theme for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit off-putting sometimes if there's a serious topic that someone puts in, and it's like, it tells you to pack your snorkel. I've seen a few cases like that. But one of the reasons that we launched it and designed it in a way to create fun, kind of goofy responses is, one, because this AI is still evolving. It's still not perfect. It's not the kind of thing that you can build, at least the way that we're using it, deep analysis on yet. Obviously, we expect that to change as it gets better, but right now it is, it's not perfect. The other thing is that it needed to align with our brand and vision and marketing, which is to make mapping fun. Like, mapping feels so overwhelming to everyday people, even if, like even if, it feels overwhelming to everyday people, or they don't even know that it's possible for everyday people. So that's why we launched Maps GPT with some goofy themes and marketing materials and language and things like that, because we know that for Proxi to be successful, we not only have to build a really great product, but we have to convince consumers and people that maps can be fun, which geospatial people have known forever, but I want to bring that to everyday people. And so Maps GPT is a way that we can kind of start changing the hearts and minds of people too.
And also just by giving everyday people that ability and that accessibility, then I feel like if everyone can make a map, who knows how dependent humans will become on maps. It's such a good way of sharing information in a very quick, definitive way. I feel like, I don't know, it won't just be people with, degrees in GIS or cartography who can make maps.
Exactly. And I still think, I don't really think that we're even competing with those folks, because they're doing a whole different level of analysis in depth. But what
I feel like you're just giving the opportunity to everyone.
Exactly. We're giving the opportunity. And I think it, like you were saying, what it can enable and what it can enable for people is huge. I mean, if we can enlist people to help us map the world, it's like we can find places and explore the world in a whole new way. You can walk out your door and see history, and you can find history in where you are. You can just become more connected to place. And so, yeah, that's what we're really excited about. And that's kind of part of the big vision that we work towards and talk to investors about and things like that.
So did you follow tradition and make ChatGPT code it for you from a paper sketch?
Okay, I love that question. No, but I did use it heavily in the creation of Maps GPT.
That's always the story with it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So my background, I was an engineer, but not in computer. I was a chemical engineer, and I basically am self-taught in really hacky types of software coding. So CSS, HTML, JavaScript, just based front end for the most part. But I never have had formal training in it, even though I know enough to be dangerous. And ChatGPT has been so helpful for me for debugging things, figuring out how I want to integrate stuff with ChatGPT, or Maps GPT. I built the whole front end for it, and our director of engineering, who actually runs the real code at Proxi, built the back end. And so I all the time was in conversation with ChatGPT, asking like, hey, can you update this JavaScript code to do this once the person clicks submit and do that? And it was great. You have to have some baseline knowledge to know when it's lying or when it's wrong or how to fix when it's wrong. But I certainly was able to build much faster than I would have otherwise been able to, because of that ability to be in conversation with ChatGPT during the building process.
And so is ChatGPT acting as the geocoder?
No, it's not. No, so that's kind of, the short answer is no. We are doing all of the geocoding. We're doing the moderation. We're doing the checks to see if these businesses actually exist. So when you, the barrier to entry to building just a basic map on top of a ChatGPT response is really low. You'll see them pop up all the time. I'm not going to name any, but there's all kinds of people who it's like, build your itinerary, build this, build that. And those softwares are cool, but the barrier to entry is really low, and often their responses are really poor because they don't have the infrastructure to check if places that ChatGPT responded with are legit, or if they're actually located in proximity to the place that you have suggested. And so, like, for example, if it suggests McDonald's and your map is supposed to be centered on London, it might put the map of where the McDonald's is in Texas or something like that. So the fact that we built it on top of Proxi and we're using our kind of processes, which do include external API calls, means that our results are a lot more reliable than some of the other people's who have built in this space. But no, Maps, ChatGPT doesn't have a reverse geocoder yet, but if they do, that'd be pretty powerful. Maybe they could get us to do it for them.
That's actually related to another person that I'm I've tried to reach out to most of them, but not all of them. There's one that is using it's using ChatGPT to form overpass turbo queries, because apparently that's really hard syntax to learn.
Okay.
To basically go into OpenStreetMap, retrieve whatever the subject of the query is, for example, I don't know, points of interest within 50 meters. And then it provides a human readable interpretation of the query response from overpass turbo. So yeah, I guess, but that's still not using ChatGPT's own geographic data.
Yeah, you usually have to, it's mostly it's all responding with text information. And so what the power of it with Maps so far, I'm sure they can add more, is that it can turn, these natural language requests that humans have into something that might be able to search our database. So think about the way that you search for, let's say a restaurant today. You have to go into Yelp or Google Maps and you have to kind of follow their rigid form of searching. I want to search for this many dollar signs and I want to search for this type of cuisine. It's like a true false, very rigid way of searching. But oftentimes what you're really trying to get at is, I want a place to impress my in-laws tonight. I don't really care if it's Italian or French or whatever. I just want to impress my in-laws and I don't want to break the bank, but I also don't want to seem cheap. Okay. What ChatGPT and OpenAI are allowing companies like us to do is use that, their language model to decipher that natural language request and then turn that into queries that are readable by our software. And that's where a lot of the power comes from. It's not actually doing the geocoding or stuff like that. It just helps us turn human language and desires into machine readable queries that we can then return to users, which is really cool. I assume that the person you're hoping to talk to it's probably using it in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder, like, I don't know how you could do it, but it would be really cool to see if you could extract a database of all of the geospatial data that ChatGPT or that's in the large language model that it's based on. Anyway.
I don't even know if it would know that it's geospatial.
Yeah, right.
It probably could.
Like, I mean, you could start with, what are the coordinates of all of the world's largest 50 cities or something. See how, I don't know how you would.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I wouldn't trust it for that.
It'd be really interesting to just chuck them on a map and I don't know. Anyway.
Well, maybe in the future, but it makes up a lot of shit. Well,
yeah,
sorry, I don't think it's
definitely.
It makes things up like crazy, like even coordinates or things like that. That's why we have a lot of checks on our end before we add things to the map. But yeah, it could do that. I wouldn't trust it today, but I'm sure it'll get better over time.
I feel like there's even a disclaimer at the bottom of Maps GPT saying like, don't base any decision making off of this. And that's right. Because, I mean, AI is just in its infancy.
Right. And that goes back to why we launched Maps GPT as a goofy tool, because we also don't want people making decisions based off of it. So, I mean, low risk decisions like where to eat dinner or where to, go find, a place to take my dog out to the park. Like, that's fine. But yeah, a climate change decision probably should not be outsourced to Maps GPT right now.
On a bit of a tangent, I saw in the news that a bunch of sort of AI specialists and Elon Musk kind of signed something saying they wanted to halt AI progress. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't disagree. I think so whenever I was working on my PhD in HCI, I definitely saw a lot of ways that AI was used for harm and was used for decision making when it wasn't ready to be used for decision making. And I don't necessarily disagree. I think that things are moving really fast in this space. Luckily, with Maps GPT, the risk level of the things that we're building is really low. We're not, building weapons with it. We're not, making decisions on who gets a mortgage and who isn't with it. Like, we're building for fun. There's a lot of things like mortgage decisions and weapons and facial recognition, all these different things that AI has already started being used for, but is even further going to be used for with the prevalence of something like, the OpenAI APIs, and often by people who might not know the implications and biases that come with those models. And so, I think for society, it makes a lot of sense for us to move forward carefully with it. And I think there's a lot of good that can be done with it too, but I think there's a real potential for harm. And so even though I enjoy using it for our software, I definitely want to make sure that it's done right. And if that means I can't use it for a little while, that's okay. We still have a great product with Proxi.
That brings up, we've got a couple of extra questions that relate directly to this. I'll ask them both together. So do you have any plans for advanced analysis functions in future? So geospatial analysis, and are there any implications for feature extraction? And I think the ethical context is a nice one to lead into these questions.
So if you're asking if we're going to veer toward geospatial analysis in the sense that we might compete or something like that with existing geospatial tools built by geospatial professionals, I kind of doubt it. I think more of our tools and next steps will be aligned with helping people who create these maps understand the type of people that are using the maps, not in a creepy way, but how to serve them better, where we might have gaps in recommendations. Are they converting on those recommendations? I think we will end up veering more towards being a marketing analytics tool, a fun social tool, things like that, versus going more into the advanced analytics space. There's other people building in that space like Felt, who I think are doing a really great job there.
Could you just tell us a bit more about Felt? I think a lot of geospatial people know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton about them other than, they are building kind of a Figma of maps.
What's Figma?
Figma is like a collaborative design tool. It was just one of the biggest acquisitions ever by Adobe. So
I heard it was acquired out of fear by Adobe.
Yeah, I think it was probably well-founded fear. It's a massive application. And so I know that Felt's kind of I think that they're working more in that advanced analytics space. And so I think what they've built is really cool, but we're focusing more consumery, marketing, advertising, creator economy, like that kind of space with maps.
And so I guess the next question is, what's next?
Well, it's going in that same direction. So we're building more tools to customize your map. We're now launching things like creator profiles where you can publish maps that you've made to a public profile. You can follow creators and things like that. We'll also be adding in more integrations into Proxi, so you can add in events in the area or other APIs that share location-based data. You can layer in Proxi. There's a lot more on the in the future for us. The other thing we're going to do is, to date, the way that people get to Proxi maps is through a creator sharing it with them. So say I make my map, I share it on Instagram, I share it on TikTok, put it on my website, whatever. That's the way that consumers get and find Proxi maps today. The next thing we're going to do is help other consumers find Proxi maps more easily. So if you landed in Austin and you're looking for the local guide to restaurants with playgrounds because you have a toddler and you want to just relax for a minute, we're going to help.
Oh my God, I so understand that.
Yes. We're going to help consumers ourselves find those guides and, reward creators who created those guides at the same time.
That could be perfect, because next week, my wife and I and our daughter are going to Paris. So you saying when we land, I could bring up Proxi somehow, and hopefully there are some Proxi creators in Paris who've done this.
Yep, exactly. The kid-friendly guide to Paris, best restaurants for kids, best playgrounds for kids in Paris. Like, that's the future that we envision, is where there's so many maps and created guides like that you can just go on. We don't have an app today, but that's, we would love to build that by the end of the year, where you can go on and find those guides to whatever area you're interested in, and have that niche knowledge that matters to you at the touch of a finger, your fingertips, instead of having to, go to Yelp or Google Maps, find a restaurant, parse through all the reviews to see if any of them say that they brought kids there. Our goal is to make that a little bit more seamless and help you convert and find the right place faster.
Or you could literally talk to it as well using the natural language.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So basically, could I sum it up by saying you're aiming to be the Instagram of geospatial?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. Or
awesome. Or the Pinterest.
Pinterest
maybe more. I don't know. Oh, you're inventing your own category, but that's the sort of the direction.
Yeah, we often say, the Pinterest of place, or the geospatial.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So,
I have one more slightly more personal question for you. As well, also already mentioned, you're the first female CEO that he's interviewed. And as a woman myself, it's nice to see a woman at the top. But what was that career progression for you? And also, how are you finding the work-life balance, especially with a child?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is kind of that saying, if you don't have a seat at the table, you just build your own table. And so that's kind of what myself and my co-founder Chelsea did with Proxi. We started the platform ourselves. We have hired women. We know that we're doing really well at what we're building, because in some ways because we are women, because often women are the ones who do a lot of the mental labor in the household, to plan trips, to figure out where to go to dinner, to figure out what to do this weekend with the kids. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we're actually excelling in this space, is because we understand the problem and the end use case deeply. Now, and then also a lot of community leaders happen to be women, and sometimes in unpaid roles and things like that. So I think for the kind of thing we're building, we are the right people to be building it. As far as work-life balance goes, it's hard. I don't know what to say other than that. I have a 3-year-old. I started Proxi when he was 6 months old. So it's hard starting a business when you're still not sleeping all the time. So it's challenging. Luckily, I have a really strong support system. My husband's great. My in-laws live downstairs from us. So I am fortunate in a lot of ways to have extra help, and that's what makes it doable.
And also, how to impress your in-laws, so that's why they're always ready to help.
Exactly. I love that. Great way to pull it full circle.
Great, that was amazing. I'm wondering that was one of the most inspiring interviews we've had so far. I feel like it would be great to get back in touch at some point and see
Yeah.
what the new chat about the next release, especially the app. I think that'll be a
Yeah,
real moment.
We'll let you know when that's ready. And yeah, I would love to come on and talk about it when we get there.